few months ago, I left my high-paying, stable job at Microsoft to build a startup from scratch. For some, it's a bold decision. For others, it's stupid. For me, it's about purpose. Let me give you a 30 seconds of backstory so it all makes sense. I left my first job when I came to Canada to build my first startup. And when it all fell apart, I decided to join Microsoft as an iOS engineer. I spent a few years at big tech, learned about shipping at scale, and worked with great people. And then I did that bold thing again. I left that stability to go back into the startup world, this time as a founding member at a Silicon Valley startup. And when I say I chose this path twice, it's not theory. I felt the comfort of a stable job and walked away from it. And that's what motivated me to start this channel and share the real side of this journey. The mistakes, the trade-offs, the learnings, and my experiences as a founding member at a Silicon Valley startup. In this particular video, I want to talk about 5 key differences between a stable job and a startup, and how did I decide to make that decision to switch over. Let's start with the biggest difference. Cross-domain responsibility. At Microsoft, my world was mostly around iOS engineering, features in my area, and owning a piece in a code base. At a startup, especially as a founding engineer, this scope explodes. Today, I'm not just an iOS developer. I own architecture across different apps. I act as a cloud architect across the whole solution. I'm in pre-sales talk. I'm also thinking about product and PMF. And at the same time, I also have to think about budgeting and financing. How much runway does this feature cost us? And not just that, I also have to think about how we hire. Who do we hire and what expectations do we have from them in their next role? It's not just the code, it's the whole system. And for me, that's the fun part. Having these cross-domain responsibilities, I started to understand how tech, sales, product, and money actually connect. I stopped thinking like just an engineer and more like an owner. The second big reason for me is leadership. At Microsoft, I could have grown to senior, staff, principal eventually, and I've built my leadership skills. At a startup, none of that exists, and leadership actually means something else. Even if you're not a CEO, your decisions impact the product and the company. As a founding member, my decisions have real accountability. If something important doesn't ship, there's no other team to blame. My decisions impact runway, timelines, and people's lives. Mistakes are expensive, not just reputationally, but also financially. And I have seen this firsthand. We just lost a month of runway just because we chose a wrong framework in our AI stack. When comparing Crew AI with LangGraph, we went with Crew AI just because it was easier to get started with and it was faster to get started with. However, it lacked a lot of important features that we would need down the road. Making that switch later on in the implementation costed us more than accepting the learning curve for LangGraph early on. Leadership in startup is less about title and more about, can I be trusted to take this forward end to end without someone holding my hand? If that kind of responsibility scares you in a good way, you're probably wired for this as well. Now that brings me to the third point, very less red tape. At Microsoft, I would spend 2 to 3 weeks in a design doc, and then a few more weeks to actually code, and then maybe a couple months to get approvals and actually ship the feature to consumers. And I get that point. I understand the process. When you have thousands of engineers working on the same product, you have millions of customers and a reputation to save, you need that layers of processes. In our startup, the feedback loop is much shorter. We can decide on a feature, code it in a few days, see if that's making an impact, talk to real customers, and actually double down or kill that feature within a week, not 6 months. You don't need a 15% approval chain to test an hypothesis. I like that level of clarity. There's nothing to hide from. There's no politics around perception. It's a simple question, are we moving the needle or not? The next reason is very simple. I am a builder at heart. Some people genuinely love optimizing for big systems. They're great at navigating orgs, influencing the roadmaps, and keeping massive platforms stable. And I totally respect that. But I am wired a little differently. I get most energy from building something from 0 to 1, looking at a blank whiteboard and not a 2-year roadmap, making decisions with incomplete information. Is it risky? Yes. Is it chaotic? Absolutely. But it's also more thrilling, more personal, and especially more honest. Because customers give you raw feedback on what you are building. I'd rather take a meaningful swing with a team that I truly believe in than spending a decade to optimize for promotions in a system that I don't fully control. That's just my personality. I enjoy taking calculated risk, and I enjoy looking back and saying, That was scary, but that was mine. And the last and the biggest reason for me is the people, especially the hyper-productive founders that I get to work with. High-performance founders optimize for outcomes, not optics. They optimize for time, not ego. They optimize for learning speed than perfections. They move aggressively, they cut what doesn't matter, they make decisions with incomplete data, and they keep going when most people would quit. The founder at my current startup is a great example for that. They have led product at Meta and Netflix before. They worked directly with Mark Zuckerberg when Facebook acquired Instagram. And they are hyper-focused on speed and still a very empathetic leader. Being around that energy changed me. I learned a lot about how to prioritize, how to think about risk, and how to negotiate. For me, that exposure is priceless. I've learned more about business, psychology, and real-world problem solving by working closely with her than I would have learned in years of traditional career progression. And if your long-term dream is to build something of your own, this is literally a live masterclass. Except you are not just watching, you are in the arena with them. Now, I don't want to sound like a motivational poster. Startups are not for everyone, and they shouldn't be. You trade stability for volatility. You trade structure for ambiguity. You trade predictable promotions with an unknown upside. You have longer days, more mental load, and constant context switching. And there's no guarantee if it will work out the way Twitter threads promise you. Hell, I don't know if my struggle will work out either, but I guess we will see. But I'll share that process with you so we know that together. So I'm not saying here that quit your jobs today and run for startups. That is absolute nonsense. But what I'm saying is, if you feel that pull to build, if you constantly keep getting these ideas, if you want your work to connect strongly with reality and not just Jira tickets, then it might be worth exploring this path once in your career. Not because it's glamorous, but because it will help you to grow in ways the comfortable environments never will. If you're someone in a comfortable job and thinking that I would like to think more like founders, hit subscribe because you are at the very right place. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.